And good afternoon to everybody. And my apologies, we're a little bit late this week, but we've been very, very busy. And so I do apologize for that. And we don't have a pretty picture up to begin the broadcast. But anyway, we've begun, and here we are. And hello to everybody out there. My dear associate has just switched off the air for thingy. Um, welcome on this beautiful early spring morning, which is technically happening in winter. Maybe cold out there, but it's a beautiful day, and I hope it's a beautiful day wherever you are. A lot has happened in the past week, and I'll be coming to that with regard to today's webinar. I hope those of you who caught it, enjoyed last week, and I must say the reading of the play Rachel was a huge success. It's an extremely beautiful play, and I would hope that at some point in the future we might be able to come back to it. But the response to it was tremendous, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar last week as well. As I say, we're all very busy at the moment here because we are in the final throes of prep for our celebratory 25th anniversary gala, which will be happening for those of you in the Pittsburgh area on the 19th, or those of you who may travel to Pittsburgh, it's on the 19th. And it's going to be a rather delightful celebration of 25 years of putting on plays here in Pittsburgh. Not that I was doing it for 25 years, but I did notice, actually, an old friend pointed out to me that I think it was last Friday I celebrated 9 years as artistic director of the company, which quite frankly surprised me that it's been so long. And then, in fact, I've been involved with the company for half its existence, which also surprised me somewhat. Anyway, as I say, we've got a big gala coming up on the 19th, and if you can join us there, sorry, I'm just cleaning my glasses. If you can join us there, we'd be delighted to see you. I'll tell you more information about that at the end. It's all on our new improved website, and for those of you who've been to look at it, it's so much better, so much easier to navigate. We are all delighted with it, and if you have any further suggestions for it, don't hesitate to let us know. Now, I'm just being passed a note here. Yes, we're going to give away 2 tickets to the gala. They normally would cost $150, which is very reasonable for galas in this day and age. But we're going to give away 2 tickets. If you email your name to marketing@pittheatre.org, we're going to draw it live on Facebook on Wednesday. So two tickets. Just send us your email. That's all you have to do. Send an email to marketing@pittheatre.org, and however many there it is there. Don't forget there's 2 T's in Pitt Theatre. And we'll do a draw next Wednesday. It'll be live on Facebook, and the winners will receive 2 tickets to the gala, which will be really nice. Nice food, nice entertainment, the giving of awards, and just the celebration of being picked. So there you are. That's a little special something. Now, this week is going to be the beginning of what I hope will be a series over the next few months under the sort of the generic title, The Fall of the House of Atreus. Now, I take that title more commonly with regard to Aesculus, known as the Oresteia. But I call it The Fall of the House of Atreus because, and that's what this week's webinar is more of a personal statement than anything else. But I think given the week that we've experienced in Europe and indeed around the world, some reference needs to be made to it. And theatre always, throughout history, has made reference to such important historic events. I just want to make a few comments on it. As I say, I'm going to be talking about this particular series of plays, the only full trilogy we have from the Greek writers is Aesculus Oresteia. Sophocles, we have his Electra. We have from Euripides, we have more reference to it. But this particular trilogy is sort of the backbone of that particular theme within playwriting that has come down to us over 2,500 years. And I think it's very important at this particular time, as I say, in world history, that we take note of what theatre has to teach us, because theatre, as I've often said, theatre is, after all, a record of human behavior. Art, in general, is a record of human behavior. Sometimes it goes off onto strange tangents and wonderful fantasies, but fundamentally at its core, art is us. It's who we are, it's what we are, and very often it will demonstrate why we are who we are and what we are. And very often art, and theatre in particular, is more honest than other more official records. As the saying goes, the first victim of war is truth. And that would be true, I think, since the earliest of times, when man discovered that, or mankind, or humankind, in these more progressive days, humankind discovered that by wielding a big bone or a lump of wood, it could defeat those it didn't like. Whether those that primitive form of humanity went back to their caves and told the truth about it, we'll never know. But generally speaking, it is an absolute truth that the first victim of war is truth. And that's very clear in the present conflict. The particular aggressor is suppressing truth as much as he is oppressing his neighboring country. We see evidence of that in our news broadcast. We see evidence of that coming out of Ukraine, and we see it coming out of Russia, that there is a distinct suppression of truth. Now, that suppression of truth may be happening on both sides. I don't know. But one thing I'm absolutely certain of is that truth will be suppressed. Sometimes, perhaps for reasons of keeping information secret from the opposing force, and sometimes for reassuring and bolstering the population within the country that is the aggressor, or indeed the victim of aggression. It certainly happens in every war that the truth is not always told, but very often that not telling the truth carries on after the whole process is over. And I'll come to that again in a moment. It becomes, instead of truth, we get propaganda. Another thing that theatre can examine is the effect that war has on the individual. Right from the earliest days of the Greek theatre, right through to modern theatre, and indeed modern cinema. And if you want an example of what I mean, if you look at those great war movies that are not all gung-ho and Rambo will go and defeat, or John Wayne will go and defeat thousands of enemies single-handed. But when you look at movies that have been created, or plays that have been created, based on the reality of war, look at things like All Quiet on the Western Front, Paths of Glory, even Saving Private Ryan. The art of theatre, the art of cinema has shown us that war is not just a national effort. It's not about big armies and big nations, but it is a very personal effort. And each of those movies, and indeed some plays that have been created on the same topic, show that at the end of the day, war is about one person and another person fighting. And if you've seen Saving Private Ryan, the perfect example is that moment in the room where two men have no bullets left, have no guns to use, and end up fighting one another hand to hand until one of them is stabbed to death. It is the most brilliant, beautiful, if I dare use the word, demonstration that war is a personal experience. It is something that happens to men and women on a very personal basis. It is ugly. And the effects of it are deeply personal. So art not merely demonstrates how war is carried out, but it demonstrates the price to be paid. And that price is paid both by and for the act of making war. By making war, we pay a price. For making war, because we made war, we pay a price. And when I say we, I'm talking about the individual, the thousands, possibly millions of refugees, the second victim of war. The first is truth, the second is women, always, and children, the displaced. This is the reality that the art of theatre, and that all art, be it a movie like Private Ryan or a painting like Guernica by Picasso, all of it is a representation of what we do to each other and what we are sometimes forced to do to each other because an act of war is taking place. So today I want to do a tiny examination of this group of plays, and in particular the first one from the Oresteia, and I'm going to return to it and to the other plays later in the year. But fundamentally, over 2,500 years ago, Aesculus wrote what is, as I said, the one surviving Greek trilogy. And this particular trilogy has spawned such a vast amount of theatre, of art, of cinema, of music over the past 2 millennia. Trilogy, as I say, is known as the Oresteia. And the fundamental plot is that it concerns the return of Agamemnon from the Trojan War. It is not about the Trojan War. It is about the aftermath of the Trojan War. But the Trojan War is the dominant factor. And it is to that extent, because we must remember Aeschylus was a poet talking about the effects of war. The dominant war in, we used to think Greek mythology, but now we're fairly certain was a Greek reality because we found Troy. It is about that particular war dominated the imagination in the way that the First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnamese War have dominated art, the art of theatre, the art of cinema, ever since they took place. War has always been a strong motivation for writers and for artists. Shakespeare, I'll come to him later as well. But this particular cycle, describing Agamemnon's return and the result of his return, which is basically that he was murdered by his wife, then his son murdered his mother, egged on by his sister, and was then punished by the avenging Furies, and then eventually it all wraps up with the great god Apollo forgiving everybody, because we always believe God forgives us. But the cycle describes the effects rather than the conduct of war, and speaks of war and conquest in terms we can actually recognize far too easily in these troubled times. A war begun by an aggressive leader, a war won by a leader who could not fully contain the effects of what he had begun. So, as I say, Aeschylus wrote a trilogy about war and its aftermath, particularly its aftermath. And I think the lesson we learn from it, Shakespeare brilliantly understood. He understood the power of Aeschylus' message, as he said in brilliant terms, "As flies to wanton boys are we to the gods. They kill us for their sport." And if you like, for the gods, read our own sense of ourselves, our own sense of power, our own sense of authority. We create gods of ourselves. We create gods for ourselves. We elevate our leaders to a magnitude that they do not deserve or should not deserve to be raised to. Now, although the Oresteia, and particularly the first play, the Agamemnon, is not a direct parallel to any given war, the characters in it offer a view into the nature of participants in war. Now, when Aeschylus starts with the Agamemnon, and I'm not going to analyze the entire play, as I say, this week is more of a personal statement, but I will be doing that in a later webinar. But I want to look at there are certain factors within this play that are universal and eternal. And brilliantly, Aesculus is writing about the return of Agamemnon after the victory. But before Agamemnon arrives, nobody knows the victory has happened. So that begins with the people who are waiting, to know what has happened. And that is universal, because how many of us pick up our morning newspaper or tune into the morning news broadcast to find out what happened yesterday, given the current circumstances? How are the aggressors doing? How are the defenders doing? What is our government doing? What are other governments doing? We want to get information. We need information, because we all realize just how serious this could be, that this could escalate into something infinitely bigger. How do we deal with it? How do our politicians deal with it? How do they manage it without escalation? How can it be done? This information we need to know, and whether that information is true or not, we don't know. We have to make assumptions. So he starts this brilliant play. I'm going to read you some extracts, and for once I'm actually reading straight out of a script, so forgive me, but I put this together slightly late because I changed my mind about things. But he begins with a soldier, a watchman, waiting for news, watching for a signal that will finally, after a long period of time, tell us what has happened. The watchman waiting for the news. Dear gods, set me free from all the pain. The long watch I keep, 1 whole year awake. Propped on my arms, crouched on the roofs of Atreus like a dog. I think that is one of the most remarkable ways of beginning any play, and it was 2,500 years ago. Please let me stop waiting. I don't care what the result is, just let me stop waiting. Let me know. I know the stars by heart, the armies of the night. And there, in the lead, the ones that bring us snow or crops of summer, bring us all we have, our great blazing kings of the sky. I know them when they rise, when they fall, and now I watch for the light, the signal fire breaking out of Troy. Shouting Troy is taken. So she commands, full of her high hopes, that woman who maneuvers like a man. The she is Clytemnestra, the wife of Agamemnon, waiting. She has been waiting for the signal, but so has everybody else, the common soldier, waiting for it to stop. And this notion of him standing, waiting, looking for the signal forever is such a personal statement. It is not about a mighty king or a mighty queen or a princess waiting for the news. It's about an ordinary soldier, just a man, knowing that when that signal comes, all will change. And he's been waiting for a very long time. And when I keep to my bed, soaked in dew, the thoughts go groping through the night, and the good dreams that used to guard my sleep not here. It's the old comrade, terror, at my neck. I mustn't sleep. And that is the point, that what Aesculus is demonstrating, that to the individual, the news when it comes could be terror, could be terrifying, could be defeat. But waiting to know is the most awful thing. You know, I mean, even on a very simple level, you do an examination or you make an application for a job, and that period between putting it in and getting the result, there is fear for everybody. We all experience it. And that is one of the effects of war, not knowing the result, not getting the news, not getting the information. And right now, there are people all over Europe and in America experience exactly that sensation. Aeschylus wrote about it 2,500 years ago. Humanity doesn't change. Human nature doesn't change. And then the news comes. And the news comes, as he predicts, fire in the sky. It's the signal. And again, Aesculus puts it rather beautifully. You dawn of the darkness, you turn night to day. I see the light at last. And this notion that the signal flame that he sees in the distance is the dawn of the day, it's the dawn of the new day, the dawn of this. It is the signal that he has been waiting for. I see the light at last. They'll be dancing in the streets of Argos thanks to you, thanks to this new stroke. This signal says victory, and we will feel joy. And we all do. When we win, we're happy. But for a rather unfortunate reason. There's your signal clear and true, my queen. Rise up from bed, hurry, lift the cry of triumph through the house. Praise the gods for the beacon if they've taken Troy. And that's it. We are, once victory is given to us, once we are told it's all okay, we've won, we believe it, we accept it, it is joyous. I love the notion of the signal as well. It's a very ancient and for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, if you've seen Lord of the Rings, you get it, because when the signal flame is lit in Gondor and on tops of mountains, more fires are lit, and light travels faster than anything. We know that thanks to Einstein, but they understood it right back into antiquity. You want to send a signal, light a fire. But it is more important because it's not just the signal of the signal on the mountaintop. A fire has been lit, and that fire is Troy, and we're going to learn about that as well. So we have a signal coming saying victory has happened. It's wonderful. We get the news. But what does the victory mean? What does any victory mean? As I mentioned, Clytemnestra, Agamemnon's wife, waiting for that same signal, waiting to hear, have they won? Is Troy destroyed? And it is Clytemnestra herself who describes victory. The city's ours, in our hands this very day. I can hear the cries in crossfire rock the walls. Pour oil and wine in the same bowl, what have you? Friendship? A struggle to the end, so with the victors and the victims. Outcries, you can hear them clashing like their fates. They are kneeling by the bodies of the dead, embracing men and brothers, infants over the aged loins that gave them life, and sobbing as the yoke constricts their last free breath for every dear one lost. That is the description of the losers. That is the joy that will have everybody in Argos dancing, that the victors have defeated their victims, and that the result of any war, the result of any conquest, the result of any victory is defeat, and defeat is cruel. And there's no escaping that. Defeat is always cruel, just as aggression is always cruel. The image that Aesculus wrote of war has not changed in 2,500 years. They are kneeling by the bodies of the dead, embracing men and brothers, infants over the aged loins that gave them life, and sobbing. That structure of phrase is magnificent, because it is about the personal suffering that war brings. It is about the fact that war is not just about mighty armies. It is about men and women, individuals. And the others there, plunging breakneck through the night, the labor of battle sets them down, ravenous to breakfast on the last remains of Troy. And as the aggressor wins, if the aggressor wins, that phrase, ravenous to breakfast on the last remains of Troy, and it is like that. For the aggressor to be victorious, it is to banquet on the remnants of what you have conquered in many senses. because the spoils of war go to the victors. Not by rank, but chance. By the lots they drew, they lodge in the houses captured by the spear. The occupying army. He talked 2,500 years ago. We recognize this today. Settling in so soon, released from the open sky, the frost and dew. Lucky men, off guard at last, they sleep away their first good night in years. And who can blame them? Because the soldier in the battle is as much the victim. Be they victorious or defeated, each soldier is the victim of the battle. Each soldier suffers the vicissitudes of war, of fighting. And we condemn the occupying army and say, how dare they take the house, how dare they? Well, it's not an occupying army, it's individual people who have been out there fighting, risking their lives, suffering, cold, wet, damp, undernourished, suddenly finding that the spoils of war are theirs. They then occupy, they take. It is the cruelty of war. Whether a war is justified or not, and I don't propose to make any comment on whether any war is justified or not, although the current one I think is very clear, it's not. But it is not, and we hear stories of these, for instance, these young men in the aggressive army, literally surrendering because they don't know what they're fighting for, literally surrendering because they don't know why they're there, surrendering because they are frightened, surrendering because there's somebody behind them with a gun pointing at the back of their head saying, fight. These are as much the victims. The aggressors can be as much the victims of war as the defeated can. And here, Aesculus demonstrates that the occupier will take what it most needs: safety, security, comfort, because just like the victims, just like the defeated, they have suffered too. This is my point, that theatre does not merely act as a piece of propaganda, or should not, although sometimes it does, and again, I'll mention that in a moment. Theatre should represent the reality, the truth of what is happening. And war, the first victim of war is often the truth. But in theatre, in art, we can explain the truth. We can demonstrate the truth. That to the individual involved in war, they can be as much the victim as the defeated. The victor can be as much the victim as the defeated. They become the victim of their own circumstance. And Aesculus does a beautiful job in demonstrating that. So, then comes the next stage, because we've heard of the victory, and we've had the joy of the victory described, and the result of the victory described both by the soldier, by the herald who comes, by Clytemnestra herself. But we still haven't seen the evidence. All we've seen is a light in the sky. All we've got was a news broadcast. All we've got was what it says in the newspaper. We won. But we still don't know. There is doubt of the information. Is it just speculation, or worse, is it just propaganda? And that is another point that Aeschylus addresses. And the chorus, the commentating public, if you like, the people represented by the chorus, ask these very important, or raises these very important points. Are we getting the truth? Fire comes and the news is good. On the mountaintop, the flames was lit. All across from Troy, these flames were lit. Fire comes and the news is good. It races through the streets. Everybody reads it, everybody hears it, and everybody says, yay, we won. But is it true? Who knows? Or just another lie from heaven? So even then, 2,500 years ago, Aeschylus is saying, don't believe everything you read. It could be propaganda. Without clear, precise, and absolute evidence, it's still speculation. He goes on, show us the man so childish, wonder-struck. He's fired up with the first torch. Then when the message shifts, he's sick at heart. And that happens so often in war, so often in the news we get about war. It happens still. We hear a good result, way, everything's wonderful. The next day, we hear a bad result, oh my God, it's all disaster. It's true in life, you know, no matter how much people praise you, it's always the one person who says you're actually not very good. That's the one you tend to believe. It's the demonstration that the populace, that the people, especially the victors, need confirmation. They need to know it's truly over. The defeated know because they are defeated. But the victors don't know, not until it's completely and utterly confirmed. Just as we read our newspapers or listen to our news broadcasts on the radio or the TV, we must accept that it is always simply speculation until the evidence is before us. In Christian terms, we are all doubting Thomases on that level. So gullible, he goes on. Their stories spread like wildfire. They fly fast and die faster. Rumors voiced by women come to nothing. Women particularly, because the women want it to be over. They want their men back. They want to know that it's true. Women are the second victims of war. Soon we'll know her fires for what they are, the her referred to as Clytemnestra. Her relay race of torches, hand to hand, know if they're real or just a dream. So here, again, Aesculus is explaining to us the news, the desire for it to be over, the desire to win, the need to win, has to be confirmed. We need to know, is it true or not? Are we just exciting ourselves, or is it propaganda from the enemy? Who knows? To make us withdraw. We need to know. It's an absolute truism that has stayed with us again from the time of the early Greeks. They understood it. War, the nature of war, has not changed. As I've often said, the only thing that changes are fashion and technology. The technology of war may have changed. The fashion, the clothes we wear, the equipment we have may have changed, but the nature of war has not. War is war is war, and the result of war we need proof of. So he then adds in a very interesting point, because he is concerned that we understand, I believe, and everything I tell you may be wrong, I believe he needs that we understand what war is to the individual. He's constantly referring in this earlier sequence that war is about the individual. It's about the soldier, not about the army, but about the soldier and the soldier next to him and the soldier next to him and the soldier next to him that make up an army. But each individual is the kernel of that fight, of the kernel of that battle. He writes an interesting description, and I would address your imaginations to the Normandy landings in World War II. We're back to Saving Private Ryan and The Longest Day in cinematic terms. But that happened then as much as it happened now. And he has that described as well. Then on the beaches, it was worse. Your mind immediately goes to Omaha Beach. Dug in under the enemy ramparts, deadly going. Out of the sky, out of the marshy flats, the dews soaked us, turned the ruts we fought in into gullies, made our gear, our scalps, crawl with lice. You're in the trenches of the First World War here. And talk of the cold, the sleet to freeze the gulls, and the big snows come avalanching down from Ida. Oh, but the heat of the sea and the windless noons, the swells asleep, dropped to a dead calm, all the negativity of the experience of being a soldier. But then he goes on, but why weep now? It's over for us, over for them. The dead can rest and never rise again. No need to call their muster. We're alive. Do we have to go on raking old wounds? Goodbye to all that. Glad I am to say it. And that is, I adore that because it is a cry from the heart of the soldier. Goodbye to all that. Glad I am to say it. This notion that the suffering of the soldier in the field absolutely has not changed in 2,500 years. Aesculus wrote about it. It's been copied. There have been variations on it, but nothing new and nothing original. This is what it was like. And when you start with the phrase, then on the beaches it was worse, we understand it. We know it. It's in our own family history. Whether it be Second World War, First World War, Korean War, Vietnamese War, we know it. It's actual. It's part of the reality of warfare that Aeschylus was writing about. And the warfare is carried on, as I say, not by armies, but by the individual soldier. And when the war is over and we have, and if you've ever been to Normandy, I have, and all along the north coast of France, you find these graveyards that go on forever. And it is the saddest, it is beautiful in its sadness. But for the soldier, the dead can rest and never rise again. No need to call their muster. We're alive. Do we have to go on raking old wounds? The fact that they survive, the fact that the soldier survives is the great miracle of war, because it's random, it's arbitrary. That a soldier should survive the great onslaught is in itself a minor miracle. And what the soldier wants to say is goodbye to all that. Glad I am to say it. I think you'll find any veteran of any war does not want to go back, does not want it to happen again, would never want to wish it on anyone. And that has happened for 2,500 years. So the culmination of all this, and as I say, this is I'm making this particular webinar a personal point about the nature of war, because I am deep in my soul essentially a pacifist who recognizes that once attacked, one must defend. You know, to be the total and perfect anti-war person, you say, well, all war is wrong and nobody should fight. Well, that's all very well until somebody is killing your family. And then the time comes when you have to decide, do I defend or not? And human nature, since the dawn of time, since the dawn of what we laughingly describe as civilization, the result has always been the same. If attacked, you must defend. And if the attacker, if the aggressor is not, and it seldom is by the free vote of any nation, it is usually by some autocratic, all-controlling leader. Our reaction to it within the bounds of human nature is, I must defend myself, my family, my friends, all the way up to my country. Because if you listen, and Aeschylus again gives us an example, the words of the victor, especially when the victor is an aggressor, the words of the defending victor are slightly different, but not entirely. But the words of the victor tend to be merciless, tend to be triumphant, tend to be self-justification. And in the immortal words of ABBA, the winner takes it all. That's the cruel reality of victory, that the winner wins. The winner wins everything. And Agamemnon, when he finally arrives and confirms that victory has in fact happened, that they have won, that Troy is defeated, speaks with what I think is the unfortunate truth of victory for the aggressor. First, with justice, I salute my Argos and my gods. My country, my gods. Now, God is always on the side of the winner in the mouth of the winner. God has deserted us is usually on the mouth of the defeated. So we always find a way of blaming the gods in some way, or if not blaming them, at least using them as an excuse. Sorry, I've just noticed my computer is running low and I have to plug it in. You see, this shows you the more amazing reality of these webinars. That's better, I think. Yes. We've got much light here, but anyway. There I am. I'm back. I'm on. Sorry, I had to change computers because mine died. But anyway, to complete my points, the victor, as I say, the victor takes it all, and the victor will always indicate that it was the gods on his side. Therefore, he was justified, and that's what I mean by the point of justification. He carries on. I salute Argos and my gods, my accomplices who brought me home and won my rights from Priam's Troy. Now, won my rights from Priam's Troy. This argument that this is my right to win this battle because I am claiming that which is mine. That is a frequent cry throughout history, and it is happening right now. This belief that the aggressor has the right to reunite the Slavic world under his rule. This is Agamemnon. This is 2,500 years ago. And today, nothing has changed. Human nature is what it is. And people fight wars for the reason that people fight wars. And the reason people fight wars is to win something. And when the winner wins, the winner takes it all. He goes on, no need to hear our pleas. Once for all, they consigned their lots to the urn of blood. They pitched on death for men, annihilation for the city. They chose to fight us when we tried to take what was ours. Hope's hand hovering over the urn of mercy left it empty. Look for the smoke. It is the city's sea mark building even now. I think that image is so brilliant and so awful. Look for the smoke. The sea mark is that city burning, and it is burning so much that it can be seen across the ocean. The storms of ruin live, her last dying breath rising up from the ashes send us gales of incense rich in gold. Burning city enriches us, makes us stronger. For that, we must thank the gods with a sacrifice our sons will long remember. Let us thank the gods for being on our side. God is on our side. God will choose us. He goes on. Now, I would draw reference in that to And I've mentioned this before, but if you can find it, go, and if I will find it when I come back to the fall of the House of Atreus again. But Mark Twain wrote a rather brilliant thing called the War Poem, in which he has a preacher praying to God to be on the side of us and to damn and destroy our enemies and crush them under our heel because God is on our side and we are justified. And in the poem, he has a stranger walk in and reverse the prayer, praying to God to destroy the enemy, praying to destroy their armies, to kill their mothers and their children, to wreak havoc upon their land, praying to God to do this. Mark Twain understood what Aesculus taught us, as that art must represent the reality, the truth of what war does. I am not defending the aggressor by any means. I do believe that when aggression takes place, defense must be given. But the reality of not defending or of failing to defend is the success of the aggressor. And the result will always be the same. If the aggressor wins, suffering will occur. If the defender wins, suffering will still occur. There will be refugees, there will be victims, and those victims, as Aeschylus keeps pointing out, will be individual people. The gods, like flies to wanton boys, they kill us for their sport. If we put our faith in whatever God you choose, even if that God is one of logic, even if that God is simply logic, once aggression takes place and defense must be put in place, all suffer, everyone, because every army is packed with individuals. Now, the other point I want to make, sorry, I'm checking my watch because I'm not on my other computer. The other point I want to make is that is to come back to this point of propaganda. I'm arguing that theatre is our history, that it tells us the truth, or should tell us the truth. It doesn't always. And very often we look at historical figures who are justified in being considered great in their own way, but that we have addressed them with prejudiced eyes. And I want to give an example. One of the great plays by William Shakespeare, who was, I would like to say, the last of the great Greek writers, but one of his plays that we all admire and all admire the hero of it hugely is Henry V. Henry V is, by any standard, as a play about a heroic king, a play about a young heroic king who deserves our recognition for what he did. And we all know about, the Battle of Agincourt. We all know about Harfleur. We know what he did, especially at Agincourt. The defeat of a much, much larger army by his wonderful defense, which is happening now, that a massive army is being held back by a smaller but determined and dedicated army. Except the roles are reversed. He was the aggressor, and the French were the defenders. So it's never as easy as it looks. Henry V went to France to reclaim lands, to reclaim France, because he believed it was his right to do so, that his ancestral right was to govern France. So he was the aggressor. Agincourt, brilliant, wonderful. The Feast of Crispian speech, we few, we band of brothers, all of that. And our hearts rise when we listen to it. But it's not as easy as it seems. That play was propaganda. That play did not tell the absolute truth, or at least did not indicate the absolute truth. That the hero was the aggressor and the defeated were in the right. So the act of theatre must be examined with great care. We must never confuse truth with propaganda. We must never confuse art with propaganda. we must never confuse, be it Guernica was a magnificent piece of representative art on the sufferings of civilians at the hands of merciless attack. But in its own way, it is also a piece of propaganda. It is something that is selling us the idea that the aggressor, we've got to be very careful how we examine these things. And I always believe one of the best ways to do that is to go back to basics, to look at where these ideas for theatrical construct came from. And as we read through, and we will over the next few months, as we go through the Oresteia, we will see how the victims of war suffer. Because it's not just about a big army and a great king, it's about a family, the house of Atreus, and their fall. And their fall comes for the same reason that almost all aggressors fall: hubris. The great belief that I am right, I will lead, I am the only person to do so, and everyone must follow me. And once you have that kind of hubris presenting itself, we also get a situation of cometh the hour, cometh the man, which we are seeing, by the way, in Ukraine at the moment. So over the next few months, I'm not going to do it every week as we did for the last month, but over the next few months, we're going to take an examination of the Oresteia, how it represents the futility of hubris, because Agamemnon comes to a very unpleasant end, and so does his wife, and his son suffers for it appallingly. And it just, I think it is a wonderful demonstration of, be careful what you wish for, the gods are listening. So anyway, that's all I want to talk about this week. Next week, I'm going to, while we're on the topic of the unpleasantness, and I did mention Shakespeare, what I'm going to do next week is take a look at what Shakespeare had to say about war. We're going to look at some of the more famous speeches and some of the scenes that are in plays demonstrating how Shakespeare looked at it, how he viewed it, how he addressed it. Because after the Greeks, as you all know, who've been listening to me long enough, Shakespeare is, as I say, the last of the great Greek playwrights. And he also stole most of his themes from them. So next week, it's going to be Shakespeare on war. And that's all I have to say this week. I just want to remind everybody, thank you for your support. Thank you for your support for the webinar. Do tell people that it is available on YouTube, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel as much as you would subscribe to our Facebook page. We are having the competition. If you just email in your email address, that's all you need to do. Send an email address to marketing@bigtheatre.org. There it is on the screen. Send in that, and on Wednesday next, we will draw one of those email addresses, and that lucky person will get 2 free tickets to Gale on the 19th, which is going to be a lovely evening. And you can come and say hello to me, which would be really nice. Yeah, mark your calendars for that. If you're in the Pittsburgh region, it's very reasonable. It's $150. If you don't want to be there for the full evening, if you just want to come along and join us later on, after we've done all the awards and chats, it's $100. But you miss some of the food. Not all of it, but some of it. And you don't want to miss the food. I don't want to miss the food. I like the food. Anyway, that's for that. Thank you again if you supported our Expand the Canon last Sunday. We will have a new one coming up in a month's time, another play reading with 2 more to go this year. There is Bold Stroke for a Wife, which I think is a very risky title. My experience of why having been what it is. And we won't go into that. My colleague here is restricting me. So there are the dates. It's all on the new improved website. It's new, not new actually. It's just deeply improved, very usable. If you have any comments about the new website, let us know those as well. In the meantime, have a wonderful week. Let us hope that by a week's time, the news, rather than the propaganda, is a lot better than it is today. But go out and enjoy the rest of the glorious day if it's glorious where you are. Thank you all. Bye for now.